Okay, in this video, we're gonna use long division. Um, First, you need to know the vocabulary here. Um, Outside here is basically the divisor. The quotient is basically what you're gonna be looking for. The dividend basically goes on the inside. Make sure that it's in order from the highest um, power to the smallest. And the remainder, when you finish, is also something you're going to be looking for. In here, we need to go back to a couple of rules that you need to use here. Um, One of them is when you're dividing and you have the same variable, don't forget that you need to subtract the exponent. And the next one is when you multiply and you have the same variable, you need to add the exponents. So keep that in mind. In here, the example is stating that you need to use long division. Um, and that's what we're going to use here. In other cases, if they are just asking you to divide, um, I'm going to download um, on my next video on how to divide by using a different technique that is easier. But if they tell you which one of that technique you need to use, like here, then you need to use this one. Long division again. We need to find basically the quotient here and the remainder. P of x is basically the equation that is given here, the function here. That's basically your dividend that goes on the inside. And this is going to be divided by x minus 2. X minus 2 is basically the divisor here. And once again, this example is already set up nicely because it's already in order. If you go on the inside, 3, 2, 1, and the constant there. Now the process that you see here is basically a repetition that you're going to use over and over and over again until you get to the end. And how do this works here? It's really simple. Number one, you go inside the dividend and you go basically to term number one, which is always going to be the highest one. In this case, it's 2x cubed. You write it down, and it's always going to be divided by term number one, the highest one of the divisor on the outside. In this case, it's going to be x. So you have basically 2x cubed and x. What you're going to do here is just basically divide it. Don't forget that there is a 1 here, so 2 divided by 1 just give you 2. But here now we need to use this rule. Since you're dividing, you need to subtract the exponent. Don't forget that there is a 1 here. So basically it's 3 minus 1, and that's how you get 2x minus 2. That 2x minus 2 that you get there is already going to be part of the quotient that you're looking for. Once again, after you divide term number 1 of the dividend by term number 1 of the divisor, whatever you get there, that answer is basically like the beginning of your quotient that you're looking for. But after that, the answer also that you get for the quotient here, you're going to write it down again, and you're always going to multiply by the entire divisor on the outside, which is basically x minus 2. So again, the answer that you get here, you multiply by the divisor here. And all you're going to do is distribute it. So 2x to the second times x is 2x to the third. 2x to the second times negative 2 is negative 4x to the second. And that's basically what you're going to write down below the dividend on the inside. So this is basically 2x to the third minus 4x to the second. Now let's not forget, because you actually did this before, but if you didn't, the rule is simple. After you multiply, you need to subtract, meaning change the signs of everything you see here. So if this is positive, now it becomes 1. Negative, this minus becomes 1. A plus, and what you're going to do now is just basically put them together, because that's the idea. See, this was the plan all along. What is 2x cubed minus 2x cubed? Is going to cancel out. Now, negative 3, x to the second, plus 4x to the second is 1x to the second. And then after that, you can just bring down everything on top that we haven't used yet. So you have minus 5x plus 6 here. Now, it's like if you started all over again. See, this is now your new dividend on the inside. And you're going to repeat the process that we just used for step 1. See, for step 2 now, you go here. This one is the first one, the highest. So you write it down, 1x to the second or x to the second. And you're going to divide it by the first term on the outside here. And you're going to divide once again. So when you divide here, remember 1 divided by 1 is 1. But since you're dividing, you need to subtract the exponents. So what is 2 minus 1 going to give you? 1. So you get positive x. So that should be part of your answer on top of the quotient that you're looking for. But once again, when you get, in this case, after you divide the x, you're going to take that x and multiply by the entire divisor on the outside, which is, again, x minus 2, but that's not changing. So x times x is x to the second. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. And this is basically, remember that 1 is optional. I'm just going to write it down so like that you see it clearly. You see, and you're going to do the same thing that we did before. After you multiply now, you're changing the signs. Because remember, that goal, just like before, was to eliminate x cubed. The goal here is to eliminate x to the second. But remember, you need to change that entire expression that you see here. So this becomes now a negative, and this becomes a plus. Remember, always the opposite. If below here you have a negative, then you change it into a plus. So keep that in mind. So in this case here now, just like before, this crosses out. Negative 5x plus 2x is going to give you positive 3x. Then you're going to bring down the 6 that we haven't used here yet. And again, just like before, on how we did on step 1 and 2, we're going to repeat the process. Oops, I forgot here the negative. Before I keep going. Remember, negative 5x plus 2x, negative 3x. But now here I'm going to repeat the process, and that's why you need to be careful, because if one of these signs is off, then you know your quotient is going to be off. So make sure that you don't get careless. Use a calculator. See, I'm not using one now. Use a calculator here. Now, so I'm going to repeat again step 1 and 2. Now this is going to be step 3. This is my new dividend on the inside, so this is basically negative 3x. Right? Only term number 1 you're going to use divided by term number 1 on the outside. And once again, you're dividing. Remember, there is a 1 here. So what is negative 3 divided by 1? Negative 3. And remember here, there is a 1 there and there is a 1 there. So what is 1 minus 1? It's going to give you 0. It's basically like if you just basically cross it out, because they are the same. You can just cross it out there. All right? And now I'm going to take this here, and this is going to be part of the quotient that I'm looking for on top. All right? And let's not forget that you're going to take now that answer, and you're always going to multiply by the divisor on the outside. In this case, is x minus 2. And you're going to distribute it once again. So negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. So I'm going to take this here, and I'm just going to write it down. And just like how I did before, I need to change the signs now. Because remember that the goal is to always eliminate the first term of the dividend on the inside. So you see this case here, if this is a negative, I'm going to change it into a positive. This plus becomes a minus. So in this case, clearly, negative 3 plus 3x give you 0. 6 minus 6 also give you 0. So then that implies that the remainder here equals to 0. And that's basically, you can say, the end, because one thing that you need to keep in mind is, once you see that the dividend on the inside is smaller than the first term on the outside, that's like telling you don't keep going. And clearly, this one don't have a variable, and that's how you know is smaller. Now, how do you write down your final answer? There are two different ways. So let me write down option one. All right, the first one. The first one is that you write down the quotient here, which is 2x to the second plus x minus 3, and you're always going to add the remainder here, but it's always going to be the remainder divided by the divisor here. So this is basically one way to write down your answer. Or you can just say here in writing, you can say here quotient equals to 2x to the second plus x minus 3 here, and remainder equals to 0. So both of them are good. You just decide to use the one that you understand the most. But keep in mind here, you see all of this repetition that you see here is what we are going to avoid with the new technique that we're going to learn on the next video. In this case, I have no choice because the example was stating use long division. So this is basically the long way. But keep in mind that it's always going to be the same repetition here that you see. The first term of the divisor divided by the of the dividend divided by the first term of the divisor. That will give you the quotient, and then you take that quotient and you multiply by the divisor here, and then you change the signs until you finish. I hope that this helped you out. Don't forget, for the next video, be ready. Have a nice one.